All right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions' first round selections, both of their first round selections this previous draft, as a lot was made of those first round picks, right? A lot of people did not like those selections. Me personally, really did not like the Gibbs selection, mostly due to positional value. Didn't really hate the Jack Campbell one so much. I thought that was a fine pick. That's how I felt. Those were my priors going into this. And I feel like every time one of these types of situations happens, it kind of goes through the inherent cycle, right? Whenever there's a reach, there's the immediate pushback of, oh my God, this team is so stupid. What are they doing? And I'm using reach as in, player drafted a lot higher than most people expected them to be drafted. But then there's usually the, pushback the other way of, a lot of times the fans of the team that drafted that player saying, actually, our two players are much better than you realize. They're going to be awesome. Well, how has it worked so far with Campbell and with Gibbs to start the season? We'll use some PFF grades. I know PFF isn't everyone's cup of tea, but, it's a good tool to use, right? It can give us a baseline. We're going to get into some film as well. Don't worry. But, I think PFF's pretty good. I do. Usually when I see a grade that seems surprising to me, I go watch the tape. I actually see why they graded it that way. I would say like 98% of the time. But anyway, you see, they haven't been overly impressive with Gibbs, 41st overall running back, been a better receiving back than a running back, but still nothing crazy on either end, been on the low end so far in his small sample size. For Jack Campbell, he's actually had a really weird overall situation. So his overall defensive grade, 76 out of the 81 eligible linebackers. That's not good. I'm a little bit less worried about Campbell than Gibbs, though. One thing is, you notice some very interesting splits. His run defense grade has been actively good. I mean, a 73.9 run defense grade. That's a good grade. Pass rush, very bad, second worst in football. Coverage, very bad, second worst in football. That's not ideal, but I'm not as worried as maybe you might think I would be. Because I went back and watched the tape, because again, even though I like using stats and data, I've always maintained that the best way to evaluate a player is by watching the tape, but you should also pay attention to the stats, don't throw that out. It's a tool, right? But, I watched the tape. First off, I did see good run defense, 100%. He is actively a good run defender right now. It's going to be, this concept, he's actually going to be unblocked on this play. You see how Carolina is going to be blocking. Watch how Campbell, the second he realizes he has a window, this is right when he realizes it. He says, oh, okay, I have an opportunity to try and shoot this gap and make something happen. As you see, he's going. He plays very aggressive in the run game, and that helps him and it hurts him. I think he does a very good job at stopping the run because of that. He has gotten beat on some play actions. He does. It goes both ways. That is the pro and the con. And to me, this is just a classic example of he'll get this down more when he gets more playing time. Everyone's talking so much about Gibbs and I get it, because Gibbs was the more controversial selection. Gibbs, oh my God, they drafted a guy in the first round. He's not even starting. Jack Campbell also isn't even starting right now. So I do think that once he does get the starting job, which I believe he will, I think he'll do a better job learning this stuff. It's zone coverage and, Jack Campbell, he is the one who I have circled in white. He's in charge of covering the zone second closest towards the top of the screen. So the one that's kind of right above where he's currently standing, that's where he's supposed to cover. There are 3 eligible receivers lined up towards the offense's right here. Jack Campbell actually slightly lined up towards the offense's left. Not massively, but like maybe, like a foot over there. This is something that a lot of linebackers who have been in the league for a while still don't always figure out, that Jack Campbell is going to show that he does have figured out here. Watch as, right when this play begins, you see Campbell get over, he's going to look over, and he's in position to cover a Carolina receiver. He's very far over, right? He is not over the middle of the field because he shouldn't be. You don't cover grass, you cover defenders. That side needs help. He's doing a good job of getting over there and really disrupting this play. This is an actively good play by Jack Campbell. When I watch him, I do see him have a good understanding of more simple schemes. I just think that sometimes at the NFL level, plays can get a little bit complex and just fakes are a lot trickier, and sometimes he gets fooled on those. Sometimes he pays a bit too much attention to stopping the run, but I wouldn't say that he's showing to me that he's a bad player, even though, like I said, I agree with the PFF grade in a vacuum. I just think there's more context that I wouldn't be overly worried about it. And as you see here too, watch him kind of hang with that receiver for a while, does not give up separation there. Really good stuff, I think, from Jack Campbell. So for Campbell, I think that again, maybe, I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say that there's no reason to worry whatsoever if you're a Lions fan about Jack Campbell. At the end of the day, you spent the first round pick on two positions that kind of, traditionally you draft those positions because they can be good right away. It just takes, they just don't have necessarily the highest value, specifically running back, but linebacker too to some degree. And one of Campbell's selling points was that he is NFL ready. The fact that he isn't just getting thrown into lineup and it's going to, kind of hurt his development, I think. I think sitting behind players doesn't help your development. Playing football helps your development, in my opinion. That's just a bit of a bummer, but I also do think that he will eventually figure it out. I do. And meanwhile, for Gibbs, there's things I think that they could do to help Gibbs kind of, get back into the swing of things. You see what he's doing here. When I watch Gibbs tape, it's a lot of this stuff. It's not a lot of him just being a halfback. And part of this is, I don't know if they fully expected David Montgomery to be as good as he's been this season. And so it might just be one of those things where it's just hard to let Gibbs kind of, really thrive. But watch as, the ball's not even going to go in Gibbs' direction. He does run a route, and, maybe it could have gone in his direction at a certain point. But mostly what Gibbs has been doing is being a decoy. I mean, that's most of what he's doing, is running a lot of jet sweeps where he's not getting the ball, all of that stuff, because the Lions offense doesn't really need him right now, which, again, kind of goes two different ways. On one hand, I do think that Gibbs can eventually become a better player. I think that there's a reason why maybe the overall numbers aren't particularly great just yet. I also think it's fair to say, hey, you had 2 first-round picks. You're, in my tier rankings, I put the Lions as a Super Bowl contender. You want to have your first-round picks really helping out your team right now. I decided to look at the consensus big board. This is kind of an interesting exercise of, if the next player available on the consensus big board, if you drafted them instead of who you actually drafted, would you feel better or worse than where you're currently at? But there's a bit of an asterisk here. So Christian Gonzalez, that could have been the pick instead of Gibbs. He was the highest on the consensus big board, and he played fantastic for New England before getting injured. If he goes to Detroit, would he have played 4 great games and then gotten injured too? I just don't, It's impossible to say exactly what happens. Maybe he wouldn't have even played great if he didn't have Belichick kind of coaching him up. Who knows? The asterisk is in number 10 and 11. Will Levis was technically the next highest when Jack Campbell was selected. I don't think they would have drafted a quarterback there, though, so probably Jackson Smith and Jigba if they went for consensus. I think it's fair to view quarterbacks a little bit differently in this exercise. So, would you rather have Smith and Jigba and Christian Gonzalez or Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs? Well, Smith and Jigba hasn't exactly lit the world on fire either, although I do think he would fit that scheme perfectly. And if Christian Gonzalez is injured, well, I guess that wouldn't have helped you too much either. Again, there is always ways that these picks can go wrong or go well. But, the first, I think, thing we have to do is talk about how do we feel about these draft picks so far? And I'm just going to be honest, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in how these draft picks have gone so far. I think that, I was hoping for more out of both these guys, honestly. Even if I didn't love the Gibbs pick, I thought he was going to do more right away, especially running backs tend to be great right away. He hasn't been. So, yes, I am disappointed in what we've gotten. I'm disappointed that so far, they've spent 2 first-round picks in a year where they're really competitive on 2 backup players. That's what they've done. But in the long term, is it a disaster to get someone like Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs? Do I think that they're going to end up being bust? I don't think so. I think they're both going to still end up being good players. But again, I would like to mention that, you kind of want that to happen this season, right? The NFC is very weak this year. To me, this feels like a window year. I feel like when you draft a linebacker, which was a position of need, and you draft a running back, you're expecting them to be good right away. That's what you hope. That's part of the value of drafting a running back is their good year one. That's part of the selling point. And so if you're losing that, then it becomes just disappointing at this point. The other good thing for the Lions is they've done a great job drafting in later rounds. And I've already talked about my love for Brian Branch. Maybe a Sam Laporta video is in the works at some point. They've done a lot of good stuff. Again, they've been really smart, I would say, doing basically everything with the exception of the first round in one specific draft. I love what they've done. They're a great team. They just, so far, Gibbs and Campbell haven't worked out, but we'll see how it goes in the future. That's how I view it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.